Hi, my name is Elena, and I come from a super conservative, all-girls Catholic high school. I've been in Catholic school for 7 years. I just graduated high school. Really glad that's over. I feel like a lot of people don't realize how messed up the Catholic Church is, so I kind of wanted to address a few things right off the bat. The first thing that I have to talk about is sex. Yeah, no, I don't even know why I whispered that. Sex. Let's not be ashamed, okay? One of the first things I think it's really important to talk about is birth control. Something I was taught in my daily religion class was that not only do birth control pills cause cancer, but they also cause infertility. So right off the bat, that sounds a little weird, but you have to try and imagine what I'm picturing in my mind. My religion teacher, a 40-something-year-old woman, graying hair, big crucifix around her neck, ankle-length skirt, shawl, very unassuming. She talks to you very, very nicely, and she explains things in a way that is so boring that you kind of just accept it so you don't have to hear her talk anymore. But some people do genuinely believe what she has to say. They think, yeah, this makes sense because she laid it out really carefully and logically without letting anyone raise their hands or ask a question. That makes sense. What this woman told us was that after 10 years of taking birth control, you will have absolutely no chance of ever having a kid. And, you know, people raise their hands and say things like, well, what about people who have endometriosis? What about people who have other health conditions that mean they need to take birth control so they don't die? Well, doctors only prescribe birth control because the pharmaceutical companies are part of this massive conspiracy to make money at the expense of people's health. Doctors know they should not be prescribing birth control under any circumstances, but they're being paid off by the pharmaceutical lobby, and that's why they do it. The weirdest part wasn't hearing these things, it was looking around at all the other kids in the class and thinking, they all believe this. They think she's actually telling the truth. This woman told us that in every single circumstance, the doctors were going against the best interest of the patient to prescribe birth control, and birth control causes cancer. I bet you thought I kind of started with a big one, like, wow, that was really crazy and alarming, and I can't believe kids are being taught that, and I bet the rest of the points are going to make aren't that extreme. Next thing my religion teacher says, she talks about the HPV vaccine. So I got the HPV vaccine. I got it before they improved it. So I had to get 3 shots over the course of a year, and I had a lump in my arm for like 6 months that hurt every single time you touched it, and people were like, oh, it's fine. So, you know, at that time, I thought the HPV vaccine kind of sucks. But it's really not that bad. I mean, they've even improved it now, so you don't have to go through that horrible lumpiness that I went through. Even at face value, the HPV vaccine is important, and it protects people against the human papillomavirus, which can cause cancer. It can cause cervical cancer, it can cause oral cancer, it can cause a bunch of different things that are bad, you know, objectively bad. So my ever-intelligent religion teacher comes up to the front of the class and says, HPV vaccines cause paralysis of the legs. And I look at her and I go, what the f-? And a bunch of kids raised their hands at this. It wasn't just me this time. They all raised their hands. They went, hey, I had the HPV vaccine when I was like 12 and I'm fine. I can walk. What are you talking about? How do you know that it causes paralysis of the legs? And my religion teacher, in her infinite wisdom, goes, well, there was a case where someone got the HPV vaccine and the next day their legs were paralyzed. You know, I'm really glad that at the same time, almost everyone in our religion class was also in AP psychology, because we had just learned about causation versus correlation. Just because 2 things happen at the same time, or something happens before something else happens, doesn't mean that this action caused that action. That's not how things work. we pointed this out and she said, "Oh, the bell rang, gotta go." Wow. I wish I had never heard of NFP. NFP stands for Natural Family Planning. If you've never heard that phrase before, I wish I were you right now. So, natural family planning is the idea that you can track a woman's menstrual cycle, a woman's period, and through that you can determine the days that a woman is fertile and infertile. So for example, but if you only have sex on these few very specific days in a woman's cycle, then there is up to a 99% chance that she will not get pregnant. Natural family planning, even anecdotally, doesn't work. I've never heard a story of someone who said that natural family planning worked. Maybe they're out there, but I bet it is another case of correlation and not causation. There are, of course, certain days where women are not fertile, but it's so hard to predict, and natural family planning fails so often that you really have to consider whether or not there's an agenda, because the Catholic Church really, really hates birth control. They don't want you to get pregnant on your own terms. They don't want you to have any kind of bodily autonomy. They want to be able to control women, and that's what it boils down to. This one's a little bit of a story. If you're not Catholic and you're not religious, you might not know what a retreat is. So every year or so, each grade would go on retreat. That means we'd go to another place or the church basement, and we'd get like a sort of indoor field day where it was supposed to be fun. You got snacks, sometimes you make bracelets, but it's really just a full day of religious indoctrination. So one day I went on retreat, this was 2 years ago, and we had a guest speaker who was like renowned for her work with youth. And she said, if any of you have questions you want to ask me, write them on a card and pass them up. So we all did that, and she pulls a card out of the stack and it says, "Why does God hate gay people?" She doesn't say, "God doesn't hate gay people," or, "Oh my God, what are you talking about? Of course God doesn't hate gay people." That's not what she said. She said, "There's something you need to understand. In order for a sexual relationship to be valid in the eyes of the church and in the eyes of God, it needs to be 4 things: monogamous, loving, with equal dignity, and the last one's the kicker, fruitful." So that doesn't even make any sense. Not even just when you're talking about gay people, but what about all of the straight couples who are infertile for whatever reason? You're telling me they can't have sex? Oh no, that didn't even cross your mind, did it? Because you just wanted to be homophobic. Got it. After this happened, so many people raised their hands to ask questions, and the speaker immediately said, "Oh, we have no time for questions, you guys have to leave." I was proud of my peers that day for raising their hands and being outraged, but that was in sophomore year. As it went on, and as the daily drudgery kept on, as we kept having to sit through this garbage day after day, people kind of just became immune to it. People just zoned out during religion class. They just stopped caring because they thought it was so boring. It wasn't even worth trying to argue or trying to have a conversation, because they knew the teacher would come back at them with something, usually made up statistics, and they didn't want to have to deal with it. They just said, "You know what? I don't even care anymore. I don't care what she's saying." And that is the real danger in Catholic school. It breaks you down until you don't want to even bother asking questions anymore. Those are all my main points. There are, of course, more. I haven't even really scratched the surface of the homophobia and transphobia and misogyny that is systemic in the Catholic Church and in Catholic schools overall. I'm just gonna end this on another anecdote that I think is worth sharing. At one point, a bishop came to our church to speak to us. So remember, we're all girls, we're all female students, and he looks at us and he gives a sermon. Sermon is a sort of anecdotal personal speech that a priest gives during the Mass. The bishop gets down off the altar, he starts addressing us and he says, "The hand that rocks the cradle rocks the nation. And that is why you are important." I just want you to think about that for a second. This well-respected figure of the church that we pray for every Mass, we revere him, we say, wow, he's a great guy, he really knows what he's talking about. This man said, the only way for you to impact the world is to be a mother. That's it. You be a mother, you raise sons that can go off and make a difference. That's how you change the world. It's so liberating to be out of that now, to know I will never have to set foot in my Catholic school again. I can't even explain how happy and relieved it makes me. I feel like people need to know that this is going on. So many people think organized religion doesn't do that much harm. You just have to take it with a grain of salt. Organized religion, and especially Catholicism, needs to have constraints. Of course, I am not saying that Catholicism should be outlawed and Catholic schools should be banned, although I do think it's worth exploring having less parochial schools, having more public schools, and improving public education. I do think that's worth exploring, but for the most part, I think that Catholic schools need to be investigated, heavily regulated, and the prejudice that infects and festers in these places needs to be dealt with from the top. It needs to be dealt with by the government. It needs to be dealt with authoritatively, because the students have been crying out for ages and none of them get listened to. Because we're kids. And any good, upstanding Catholic knows you never listen to what kids have to say. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you learned something. That's really what I want to accomplish with this. Again, I'm Elena. Please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. If you commented and just shared your experience or told me what you think about the Catholic Church or anything I touched on, I would really appreciate it, and I'm interested. I want to know what you guys think. I'd like to reply to all your comments if I can. Bye.